last lecture of this session, which will be, the lecture will be delivered by Sri Abed Chaudhury. If you please. He's a principal research scientist of the CSIRO Division of Plant Industry, Canberra. He's a geneticist, science writer, and been a visiting scientist at École Normale Supérieure in France. He will speak on from crop domestication to geoengineering, user-led innovation in human societies. Thank you.
So I would like to start, first of all, I'd like to thank all the organizers, Professor Lohia, my good friend Animesh Ray, and other organizers to allow me to be here. I normally divide my time now between 2 or 3 countries for the last 15 years or so, and have been working or studying basically now divided into 3 countries, which is I started out in Bangladesh and then in the US, and now in Australia. And now I work a lot in Africa as well. I wanted to start by showing you a picture of human migration, because we have heard a lot here about culture, science, more recently about art, dance. We have heard about cultures and nations, what we call the diversity of human beings. But what we often forget that we all originate in Africa about 2,000 generations ago. Okay. So 60,000 of human history out of Africa. And if you assume 30 years for one generation, that's about 2,000 generations. In Australia, in Lake Mungo, they found a human skeleton 60,000 years old, and it's assumed that if people, so I should say a bit more than 60,000, maybe 65,000. So people have already, the modern humans have already gone to Australia by 60,000 years ago. They went all over the world. Starting from Africa, they crossed the Bering Strait, went to the mainland of what is now considered United States, South America. They came to Australia, and the land route is sort of in that area, the eastern fringe of Indian subcontinent. These are the documented pathways of human migration. So what we see now, and it's considered a few thousand people came out of Africa. And the modern theory after sequencing and so on, it is thought that they mated with a previous pre-existing proto-human hominins. And depending on, I mean, I would be provocative and even suggest that depending on who you mated with, you metamorphosed into what we now consider the diverse human population. In all this, of course, there has been the crude form of Darwinian selection. So if you couldn't run fast and the lion ate you, then only the faster people prevailed. So there's this kind of textbook like Darwinian selection. But there is also sexual selection. So if a girl had curly hair and everybody else has straight hair, and if men liked the curly hair, then the curly hair went into the population, a phenomenon called sexual selection. And there is also genetic drift where a group of people got isolated. And if they all happen to have different kind of color skin, then all the people would have color skin. So the reason I'm saying all this is that these are not fiction, these are actual facts. But what we have constructed for ourselves are alternate histories based on religion, nationalism, and it's not entirely clear to me, for instance, if a particular nation claims that no, we are very special people and we have been made specially by God as opposed to this kind of genealogy, it doesn't fit into this picture at all. So whatever we are talking about, we have to be informed with some kind of reality which is provided by science, such as DNA sequencing. We have to have a reality check as opposed to advocating some kind of supremacist idea or specialized status idea, which is not borne out by facts. And a lot of the problem in the world, if you look into around talking to religious people, nationalistic people, you find that they have a theory which is not related to this at all. They have a completely different theory. And the social science people, the humanities people, the journalists, they're accepting it. Everybody in the nation state are accepting it. They're going along with it. They are forgetting their own history. So they're behaving sort of like a bit like this upstart people who come from, like, let's say, rural background, go to the cities, and very soon they have their own new family history. They've forgotten about their grandfathers. So if we are turmoiled at the moment, if we are heading deep crisis, Muhammad Yunus talked about the fiscal system yesterday, but I think we are suffering because of this psychology of inventing something for ourselves which is completely false. So with this kind of preamble, which starts out with biological science, the strength of what I'm saying is due to the DNA sequencing and actual proof of how we came to be what we are. So here is science impacting on culture, science impacting on generating a new kind of self-awareness, science impacting on why we do science and arts and literature in the first place. And a place like Presidency University, which started out at Hindu College, it has these landmark people who thought in an out-of-box way. They thought about something new, Jivanananda Das, Swami Vivekananda, etc. So what will be thinking new now? Who would be the new trailblazer coming out of Presidency University? So I invite you to think of this crisis that we have sort of enumerated, that these are the crises. And the facts are already there, but we are not looking at the facts. We are not interested. The mass people, the huge number of people of many, many countries, not just India, United States as well, they're invoking completely absurd ideas about who is better, who was chosen by God and who was not chosen by God, and all this business, And honestly, I think science is something that has provides something in this. So because of the shortage of time, I don't want to dwell on a lot of details, but informed by my own background on genetics, as well as what I have done for the last 30 years or so, which has been genetics of different organisms, more recently crop genetics. Because I decided about 15 years ago that I have had enough of this academic stream of publishing papers and then where you have published your paper, that kind of life and getting promotion. So I decided about 15 years ago that I would just give up that work. And I would take my science and try to do something real in the business model, in the public sector area, whatever. But I wanted to do utilitarian or very useful science. And this is what I started to do about 2002. So it's been about 15 years. And the way I started it, because I had started doing a lot of crop genetics, and I thought I should go back to Bangladesh. This is when I was working for the Australian government, before I had been working in the US for many, many years. But in 2002, I went back to Bangladesh. So this is roughly what the Bangladesh is. And I wanted to emphasize, I wanted to work on the area of crop domestication, particularly focusing on rice. So what you're seeing here in this green area is the area of domestication of rice. It starts from the foothills of Himalayas. It includes the eastern Assam area of India, goes into Burma and then the Yunnan province. This is where wild grasses became grass, and the wild grasses are still around. They're Coloriza rufipogon. These are rice that doesn't form a gucha. If you touch it, it shatters away. So that kills the idea that rice has been put in by some divine ordained so that people could eat it. Because rice originally could not be harvested enough in order to collect it and have a silo and so on. So these shattering genes are very important, and people inadvertently, women used to carry it, collect it, and as they walked, most of the rice fell off because it was shattering, and only few remained. And those remains had rare mutation, they are not shattering anymore. So what people found one fine morning, that this rice was growing around their homestead, but it was not shattering away. It একটা ধানের শীষ একটা গোছা হয়ে গেছে. So this shattering gene was an inadvertent innovation. It was not that some wise man sat down and said, I will make it non-shattering. No, it was the inevitable lifestyle. Somebody said lived life, japito jibon in Bangladesh. Just the way people live their life led to this innovation. And this happened in this area. And the Chinese are now claiming, because China has a lot of clout, a lot of money, they're saying, no, in China rice was domesticated. But when I looked into this and looked into areas such as Mymensingh and so on in the foothills of Himalayas, there are abundant examples that all kinds of rice are there, in fact. Every rice, whether it's, now there is misleading name like Indica and Japonica, as though there are rice only 2 types, but it's not. There are many, many types of rice. And those wild pre-domesticated rice are just still growing. Like in Bangladesh, we call it jagli puro, which is just like it's shattering. You touch it, it falls away. Another very good clue is the language. So here, science is kind of borrowing ideas from culture. So in Bangla, you see there are so many words for rice or something derived from rice. So there is dhan, there is chal, there is chira, there is muri, there is khoi. It is the largest number of words. In English, you have to say puffed rice, husked rice, etc. In other languages, Thailand, Laosian, I've seen that. But what is most revealing is that one of the word koi. Koi is a very suggestive word, because I think what happened was that ancient people were actually lighting a fire using the rice straw, and then something popped. Popped rice was the first discovered rice, I think, by human beings, maybe 20,000 years ago. And they call it koi. And this is very close to the word cow. And in fact, in Laos and Thailand, they call rice cow. They call it cow. And we call it to eating. So eating and eating rice was synonymous at one point. And so on and so forth. So you can build up a whole story where part of it is hard science and part of it is sort of like a cultural suggestion. And build your own, not only the science of it, because these days you can go and sequence all this rice. And I have in fact collected myself most of it. You can do DNA sequencing, you can build up your theories. But you can also link it with the words. You can link it with the prevailing culture. You kind of internalize your science. Science is not just laboratory molecular biology, but science is about lighting a fire and thinking about this old tradition. So this is the area where I work. This is the district of Sylhet in Bangladesh. And here you can see this little, and this white region here is India, is the state of Tripura. And our village is very easy to find because it is this little finger which is kind of poking into India from Bangladesh. So if you ever want to find our area, it's this area. So I decided to, because we had a lot of ancestral land, we sort of have this rural origin. And I broke down all the old houses and rebuilt new ones and converted all my land into kind of an R&D land. So instead of doing R&D in the laboratory, we thought we ought to be able to do R&D in the field condition where it looks like an ordinary village, but the thinking there is very sophisticated. Thinking are dictated by ideas of evolution, genomics, genetics, etc. But superficially it looks just like an ordinary village. So that was our model. And I was very much, so this is about the time when I had started to go back. This is 2006, about 11 years ago. And this man, his name is Haripodo Kapali. And the reason he became very famous, and this is a huge program actually, you don't see the rest of the people. But I was asked to go there because I had just come back from overseas then, so I was asked to go to the district of Jessore and give this award to him, just to be there. And he had found a rice called Haridhan. And Haridhan, you know how most of the rice these days in India as well as Bangladesh as well, is coming from the laboratory. So the International Rice Research Institute, there's Bangladesh, there is India Agricultural Research Council. So the research has been taken over by the big institution with people with PhD and research degrees and so on. And the farmer innovation has stopped. But it is the rice or any other crop is actually a result of great farmer innovation or user-led innovation. A new name I would like you to remember. User-led innovation as opposed to scholar-led innovation. So Hari had suddenly discovered a rice in the field. He collected it, he multiplied it, and his rice was growing better than the prevailing rice in the country. And everybody got very excited, and I think at one point the whole district of Jessore was growing his rice, Haridhan. So he was one of our user-led innovator in the same tradition as unnamed people who produced basmati thousands of years ago, because nobody got an NIH grant or any government grant to have this long rice, aromatic rice. No, nobody knows. Now by sequencing we know that it's mostly indica, but the bit of aromatic gene is coming from another rice, japonica. So there's an integration, there's a piece of chromosome. It looks like an act of crossing and selection. And similarly, Kalijira, Chinikuda, Samudra Phena, hundreds of beautiful